In this lesson, we're going to kill two birds with one stone and have a little fun in the process. We're going to create a class library and then utilize that class library in both our web app, and then we're going to turn around and build a Windows Forms app and use or reference that same class library that we built earlier. And so we're going to learn about creating class libraries, real simple, and then adding references to assemblies. Again, really simple. And although I'm using custom class libraries, or I'm going to create a custom class library, the same would hold true for any assembly that we need to reference from the .NET Framework class library. I guess I need to say this, that the Framework class library is split up into multiple assemblies. In fact, if you'll recall, several videos ago, I went to, let's see if I can find it real quick. I think I can. I think we go to Windows, Microsoft.net. Where are you? Framework. Well, let's go to Framework. And then that version. And then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, there's all these files, right? System.everything. And now, the thought process here is that we're only going to load or we're going to reference those assemblies in the .NET Framework class library that we need in order to achieve some goal, perform some task. And the reason why we don't load up the entire thing and only choose individual files, and why it's all kind of split up into individual files, is that if you wanted to run your application and access one little thing in the .NET Framework class library and you had to load the entire library, then obviously that would be extremely inefficient from a resource perspective. So they split all the code up into smaller files, and now you only reference the files that you need. It'll just load up, for example, system.security, just off the top of my head, into memory. It's only 283K as opposed to, hundreds of megs of content, of library content across the entire .NET Framework class library. So that's the thought process. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. You can see that I have cs-asp_041. I didn't bother to give you a before folder, just catch up. It's the same as always. Default.aspx, add a result label, and then just meet me here in the page load. And I'm going to assume that you did that. And so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to borrow code from the recent challenge that we built involving the character class and the dice class, in order to create that hero monster using classes, that hero monster game. And so I'm going to need to open up a second instance of Visual Studio Express 2013 for web. And let's see, which one do I need here? It looks like I can just click on that one in the quick launch, and it will load it up. Okay, great. So we're going to keep this on the back burner for just a moment. We're going to go back to cs-asp_041. And what I want to do is add a new project to the solution. Now remember, a solution can contain one or more projects. And at the time I said it may not make sense why you would want to do that, but now we're going to see the practical value of doing that. So in addition to this project, the cs-asp_041, I'm going to add a second project. So I'm going to right click the solution and select add new project. And then in the Windows, you can see I already did this once, I selected the Windows templates. There should be a class library template, and I'm going to call this Hero Monster. Spell it right, and then click OK. All right, now by default it's going to give us a class1.cs. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and leave this here. I know I should split things up into their own files. I know that I should rename files to the class name, everything we talked about before, but I just want to do this quickly. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to literally copy these two classes, the character class and the dice class. So Control C, and I'll switch over here, and I'm just going to replace public class 1 with my two classes. Awesome. I'm going to save all that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select build in the context menu at the very top. And it looks like it succeeded, so that's a good step one. Now we're done with our class library. That's all it took. We created a library of code. Admittedly, it's a really tiny library, but now we can utilize that library in multiple applications. That is going to be the cool part. All right, so now I need to utilize the library. So I know I want the character class, so I'm going to start typing in character, and it's not going to find the character class. Well, the thing that we need to do is create a reference to that assembly before we can actually use it in our project. And a reference simply says that whenever you're loading up my project, I also need you to load up the code from this file. All right. So if you select the references node inside of your project and right-click it and select Add Reference, it'll open up the Reference Manager dialog. And you can see here that first of all we can select in the tabs area on the left-hand side any framework related files, and you see all these DLLs that we just looked at a moment ago in the Windows Explorer. So we can get to any of those and add them if we wanted to. Or we can browse through our hard drive to find an assembly. But since our new class library is in the same solution as our project, we can just use this other little shortcut and select solution, and here it'll find the hero monster code. I'm just going to put a little check mark next to that project and then select OK. And now you'll notice in the references you can see that it added an entry for the hero monster DLL, and you can see that these are all the other assemblies that are being referenced by our application. Okay. So now I'm going to try to type in character, and C equals new character, whoops, calendar, character. All right, and we're going to get some squigglies. And I think IntelliSense needs to catch up, or I did something wrong. Let me go ahead and then just build it to force its hand here. Okay. So now it sees that the class that we're looking for, HeroMonster.Character, is inaccessible due to its protection level. All right, I think what we need to do is come back here, and we're going to talk about accessibility or visibility modifiers. But for now, what I'm going to do is add the word public in front of each of my classes. So public class dice and public class character, and I'm going to need to rebuild this like so. And now I'm going to go over to my default.aspx.cs. You can see that a using hero monster was added to my project. Now, if it didn't come in automatically for you, then you can do the whole thing with the control period and then add the using statement like so, and you'll be able to get it. Great. So at this point, what I'm going to do is be lazy, and I'm going to copy all the code from the Challenge Hero Monster Classes Part 2, everything from the page load down through some of the helper methods we created, like display result and print stats. I'm going to hit Control-C on my keyboard, flip back over to our project, and I'm just going to blow away what we've got there, paste that in, and it doesn't look like there's any errors or any problems there. So let's go ahead and build that and see. Okay, it looks like it succeeded. So we've got two good builds, and now let's run the application. So it's an identical application to what we built before. The only difference is that we partitioned out the business logic and the domain objects, the character and the dice, and factored them out into their own class library so that I could reuse this in another project. And that's what we're going to do now. So let's shut just about everything down. Actually, I'm going to keep the cs-asp_041 open, but I'll shut down the original challenge. And now what I want to do is I'm going to open up my copy of Express 2013 for Windows Desktop that I downloaded and installed off camera. Now, what I want to do is create a new Windows Forms application. So make sure you're in if you're going to follow along, make sure you're in the C#, not the Visual Basic templates, the C# templates, select Windows and select Windows Forms Applications. And here we go, cs-asp041 Windows, and then click OK. Okay, so Bob, we've never worked with a Windows Forms application before. What do we do? Well, fortunately, they also have a label control, so that's all we really needed. Let's get rid of the text in it, and let's change its name from label 1 to result label. Very cool. All right, the next thing that we're going to need to do is I'm just going to double click in the gray area here in order to get to the code behind. And what I want to do is in the form load, I'm going to add all that code that we added in the page load of the web application project. But before I do that, I need to add a reference to our hero monster class library. And what I can do is right click, select, or actually right click on the references in the Solution Explorer in my project and select add reference. Now this time what I'm going to need to do is browse. Now you can see that it found it once already, but let's just ignore that existed there because it probably won't the first time that you look for this. And what we'll do is we'll start in our projects directory, and I'm going to drill down and look for our cs-asp_041 solution folder. Here's the Hero Monster project folder. Here's the bin folder. Here's the debug folder, and now we found the Hero Monster assembly. And I'm going to click add, and there should be a little check mark next to it. I'm going to click OK, and it should now add that reference to my project so that I should be able to add a using statement for Hero Monster, like so, and then go back over here to my page load. And I'm literally going to just go right underneath page load and just pull that, copy display result, and copy print stats. We're going to have to make a small modification here, as you'll see in a moment. But I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, go back over here to our form1.cs. I'm going to paste it all in. Now let's see if there's any errors or anything like that. No, it looks good. Let's go ahead and build this. It looks like it's going to build, and let's start the application. Now we're not going to get the satisfaction we want the very first time we run the application because we embedded HTML tags into our strings, and they were interpreted by a web browser, but they're not interpreted as paragraphs or line feed characters. So there's a simple solution to this, and I haven't shown this feature yet, but I'm just going to go Control F on my keyboard. Actually, I'm going to hit Control H on my keyboard. Control F is just to search for a keyword in your code. Control H is to find it and replace it with something else. So here's what we want to do. I'm going to look for all paragraph tags. I'm going to replace it with \r\n. I believe that's the right character I want to use, and then I'm going to select the Replace All button to the right in the current document. All right, so that should help that part out. And now what I want to do is search for the closing paragraph tag, and I'm going to replace it with nothing. So when I do that, it should remove all of the closing paragraph tags. Now, if I did this right, and if I remembered the correct sequence here, so \r\n is a carriage feed that you can build into C# strings, and it'll use that as a line feed character to any control or any screen that will recognize that. If I did this right, and I think hopefully I did it. Okay, look here. Now we get almost the identical type of output. Of course, we get different results from running it here because it's a different run than we ran it in our web browser, different dice rolls and things like that, but it works. So this is cool. We created a class library that contained logic for applications we wanted to build, and then we're able to reuse that class library in two totally different types of projects by merely adding a reference to the class library and then adding a using directive and then going ahead and using the character and the dice classes inside of our code behind files. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. And well, I guess I will say one more thing. Keep in mind that I'm showing you how to do this with custom class libraries, but the same holds true to add references to any built-in, I guess I need to stop the application, to any of the framework assemblies that we need to get at the functionality for that given feature. And that's especially true in the system dot areas, okay? And honestly, you probably won't need to do this often except for some specific cases like system.net.http, so you can communicate out through HTTP over the internet and call a web service or what have you. I have loaded up system.web.services. I've used system.xml before. It looks like it's already added in by default, and a few others that will pop up quite often whenever you're building apps. All right, that's all I wanted to say. So we'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks.